Hi, welcome to the Legislators Lounge. I'm Jim Webb, the host of the show. My co-host is Brian Chirichiello. We're here today with Chris Clement, the commissioner of DOT.
That's right.
And Senator Jim Raush. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
And why don't we start off by, we'll introduce yourselves and maybe give us a little bit of background about yourselves to the viewing public. We'll start with the commissioner.
Sure. Well, thank you. Again, my name is Chris Clement. I am the commissioner of New Hampshire Department of Transportation. Prior to coming into state government into transportation, I spent 20 years in manufacturing. I worked for a company in Dover and in Durham, New Hampshire, Heidelberg, which built big printing presses. So that's what I did. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm a degreed machinist, and married by a high school sweetheart, and have three beautiful kids.
That's great. Senator?
Senator Jim Rausch, long time resident of Derry, I think since 1972. Retired veterinarian, practiced for 30 years, Salem Animal Hospital. Served in the House of Representatives for 5 terms, 10 years, and this is now my second term in the Senate. Serve as chairman of transportation and sit on Ways and Means and a whole bunch of other committees.
Right.
Well, that's great. And Jim?
This show here is going to be on transportation, as we all know. And we're also going to be talking about, we'll start off with the first question, which is probably the big question, is we want to talk a little bit about the the toll tax that just passed the Senate yesterday, I believe.
I'll take that one. That is, we actually don't have a gas tax in the state of New Hampshire. We have a road toll. Supreme Court made that determination back in the 60s, and that's why if you drive a snowmobile or your lawn tractor or anything, your boat, anything that's not on the road, you actually can get a refund of that 18 cents gas tax. You have to apply to the Department of Safety. But we have not raised it since 1991. And the purchasing power of that 18 cents has severely diminished to the point where we are struggling to maintain our infrastructure. Certainly, I-93 is a priority, but we don't have the money now to finish it the way we're intending to. Maintenance, asphalt, steel, concrete, all those have gone up, and it's been 23 years. Prior to 1991, on average, it was raised approximately every 4 years. So what I tried to do in my piece of legislation is just partially restore some of that purchasing power, and the formula I used would raise it approximately 4 cents starting July 1st.
And let me ask you a question, Senator. I mean, was part of this bill that you introduced, was this because of the fact that we could not vote, or we did not vote for the casino bill, which would have brought some additional money for roads and bridges? That never happened. So,
well, thanks. That helps get me off the hook a little bit, because this was my last resort. I will say that in 2005, myself, Representative Wire, a couple other representatives, we tried to put a formula in that mandated that the legislators fund more of the Department of Safety from the operating budget and less from the highway fund. So we put in checks and balances. Well, the legislature has notwithstanding or suspended, so that didn't work. So the last effort was to try and get 45% of gaming money to go pay for our roads and bridges, and that didn't pass. And again, yesterday, it was defeated again, and I had hoped to get money from that. So this is I see a problem, and I think all of us as senators, representatives, we have an obligation to solve problems. Sometimes the solution isn't exactly what we want, but I believe we have that obligation, and that's what this is. It's an effort to solve it. If somebody has a better idea, I'm open.
Well, you know, I absolutely agree that, something has to be done. I actually took the legislative tour recently of the bridge over there in Portsmouth, and we were underneath it, and you could see the concrete had the structural cracks in it, and you know that eventually it's just going to fall down, and then all the rust and everything on it, it looked more like it had been neglected for years. And I was just curious, has any of the money been diverted that would be taken from this actual gas or road toll? Has any of that, does the Department of Transportation get all the money, or is some of it being shifted around like?
Well, first of all, I'm going to let the commissioner chime in on that, but I can tell you that a lot of people don't realize, in our Constitution, we have that all the road toll money has to go to the highway fund. Now, there are some departments that get funded out of it, and you can argue if that's truly a diversion, because like the state police, they patrol the highway.
Right.
So my opinion, there isn't. I would like to see more of the departments fund it outside the highway fund, but it's not unconstitutional to do what we're doing. And I don't know, Commissioner, do you have some?
That's right. The New Hampshire Highway Fund, as the Senator said, is comprised of three primary elements: the road toll or gas tax, however you want to refer to it. But the road toll is the proper term, registration fees, and then court fines from the state police. And that adds up to about $260 million per year. And because vehicles are becoming more fuel efficient and people are driving less, we're seeing that the road toll funding is going down. We were projecting about a 0.5% per year decrease, and actually we think it's being more than that because there are more fuel efficient cars. But of that $260 million, $83 million comes right off the top and goes to other agencies, and it's by statute they can, as the Senator said, they're part of, the highway fund system,
Right.
if you will.
Now, we heard an argument on the show that we did last year with Representative Campbell and Representative O'Brien. Representative O'Brien made a comment that if the roads were in such a tough shape, why wouldn't we dedicate all the 100% of those road toll funds to fix the roads? I understand it's what we're doing, the way we're doing it now is not interpreted as a problem. But how would what would you say to some of the Republicans that think that way? I mean, as far as using 100% of that money, and then if the state troopers need their own money, let them put it in the budget when budget time comes. Any comment on that?
I'm going to get the commissioner off the hook there, because it's one department versus another.
Right.
That's a great thing to say, but it's impossible in practical terms, because $80 million goes to the Department of Safety. Yeah. Would it be nice to have all $80 million stay in the highway fund? Absolutely. Yeah. But how are you going to fund the Department of Safety then? It's from the operating fund. So you're going to take away from Health and Human Services or from education, or think about the departments that you have to find $80 million to fund them. And right now they're struggling to balance the budget the way it is. So right. If you can find another $80 million in the operating fund, that would be beautiful.
Right. It's funny, wasn't that the amount that they would have to pay for the casino licensing?
Yes, we could have gotten that with, absolutely it could have, but I've been a big supporter of it, so you can blame your fellow House members on that one.
You also have us that supported that bill too. And
I think it's a shame that failed, but
I think yours was the better of the two. The one that came through yesterday wasn't as good, but I was questioned myself by people about the different ones that they're on. So I'm voting for any gambling bill that comes by here, regardless what it is, whether it's going to pass or not. I'm voting for it because we need a non-tax revenue, and that's what it was.
And all the gambling bills have had a percent going to abutting communities, so Derry would have gotten about $1 million in tax relief, and an additional sum would have gone to Rockingham County, which would have reduced their county taxes. So right. Certainly for us in the southern tier, it would have been a good thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's get back to your bill, Senator. 367.
Yes.
What's the bill? I believe it will raise, if it's passed, it'll raise about $32 million.
About $8 million per penny.
Okay, so $32 million is not a lot of money to fix a lot of the issues that we have. So my question is if we get the $32 million, Is there a priority list of things that needed to get done immediately? Maybe the
I'm
commission.
going to turn that over to the commissioner.
Yeah,
There is, and the way it's structured, so you're right, the first year is $32 million, and all $32 million, what we've proposed to House Public Works would all go to road and bridge repair, and we have three numbers that I'd like you to pay attention to. So 13 plus 12 plus 7, add those three together, that equals 32. So we'd have 13 million that would go to fair or poor road, either reconstruction or paving, and then 12 million would go to very poor roads, or what we've been saying around is wicked poor roads, the ones that are really dilapidated, and those roads can cost as much as $1 million per mile to bring back to good condition. And the remaining $7 million would go towards the municipalities, the state aid bridge program. So we'd fix or repair about 11 to 13 municipal bridges with that $7 million, which is a real big deal because today we have 353 municipal red list bridges. From a state perspective, we have 145 red list bridges.
Now I've seen something where we're going to start recategorizing them. I recently read it. It might have been in the paper. I'm not sure where I was reading that. But they want to start saying, okay, this is the real bad one. This one isn't, because like for instance, some may have a problem that you go down from 4 lanes to 2 lanes or 3 to 2 lanes, and when you get to that bridge, it's considered a red listed bridge because of the road before or after the bridge. So I know there are some in there that may not need repair, but just the road needs upgrading.
Yeah, from a bridge perspective, Representative, a red list bridge is either structurally deficient or functionally obsolete, and maybe you're referring to, one of the representatives wanted to put a bill forward that if you were coming on to one of the state's 2,100 bridges, and if it was red listed, one of the 45 red listed bridges, there would be a red dot or a red square to designate that it's a red list bridge.
Yeah, that's where I read that.
There was talk of that last session, but I don't believe that went anywhere.
Right.
Well, in a red list bridge does not mean it's unsafe. It means that it has to be inspected more frequently, and it is a priority to be repaired. Is that not correct?
You're absolutely right. And the Sarah Long Bridge that both you gentlemen visited a couple weeks ago, that's the state's #1 red list bridge, and that bridge has been downposted in terms of weight. And that's what typically happens is we'll continue to drop the weight rating. The bus that we rode over on to go there, that bus was too heavy to go across that bridge, because that bridge now can handle 20 tons, which equals 40,000 pounds, and our bus with all the people on it was about 52,000 pounds. So we couldn't even take our bus over the Sarah Mildred Long Bridge when we were there a couple Fridays ago.
Wow.
The other thing I want to point out about each penny, it's in statute now that 12% goes to municipal block grants. So the local communities are participating in every penny of that increase to help our municipal roads.
Okay.
I think Derry gets probably around $500,000 or $600,000 a year out of the block grants.
Yeah, in total it's about $30 million per year.
Wow.
And with Senator Rausch's bill, that would go up, that would add another $3.8 million a year, almost $4 million. So it would go up to $34 million per year that's going out to the cities and towns across the state to help them out with their transportation needs.
That's great.
So I think a lot of people don't realize that you know, that everything that is designed with this is to help state roads, but also try and relieve some of the burden on the local property taxpayer.
Right. And we all know the importance of infrastructure.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to ask this because you already answered to me earlier, but I'm going to ask it to you just so you can make it clear to people. Now, my wife, as I said on other shows, works in Boston. She drives about 30,000 miles a year. What would and Derry is a commuter town. Nashua is a commuter town, where most of our population are commuter towns. What would the average person driving 30,000 miles a year have to pay with this 4 cents?
Well, the math calculation I have been using is 10,000 miles. If you get 25 miles to the gallon, it'll cost you $16 per year. Now that's assuming that 4 cents is passed on. And I'm going to use an example that I see here in Derry almost on a daily basis. If you drive past Pinkerton and you see the gas station, I don't know if it's okay for me to use a name or not.
No, don't use the name.
But it's on a corner.
Any gas station.
That manufacturer, if you take a left and you go out to I-93, that same company, you'll see a difference between 3 and 5 cents per gallon. That has nothing to do other than marketing. It's on I-93, so you have a different clientele. A lot of the price of gasoline is based on market factors, not on the price of the tax or the surcharge on it. Another good example, Massachusetts, I believe, is 8 or 9 cents higher per gallon than we are. On any given day, because I live in Derry, I get down into Methuen, you can find fuel that is cheaper in Massachusetts than it is in New Hampshire. That has to do with marketing. I am of the belief that here, with our low gas tax, that we actually are contributing to more flexibility for the oil companies to play with their marketing factors and still be able to generate revenue for profit.
I believe that's true too, but then you have the other part. You say, okay, the minute this passes and on July 1st, we're going to go up 4 cents. Are we going to go up 4 or are we going to go up 10? You know, then you have the other end of the coin.
Well, that's really not fair, because let's just use the example of what's happened over the past couple of weeks. Why did the price spike? It has to do with the Ukraine. And why did it go up? It's speculating. Right. It had nothing to do other than there are marketeers who are speculating on what is going to happen between Russia and Ukraine and the diversion of oil to that European component. So they're speculating that the barrel is going to go up, and we're paying for that speculation. So you can't, there are too many factors when you have a worldwide commodity that is a commodity. Right. There are too many factors that play into that, including a lot of worldwide politics.
Right.
Let's go back to the bridge, the Saralong Bridge. We did take that tour. It was quite interesting to see that. And how important is that bridge, not only for the Portsmouth area, but and the shipyard, but the state as a whole?
Well, it's very. I'll start with the state first. It's very important to the state because that's where our only deep water port is right in Portsmouth. And upriver from that bridge is that you have a number of large national companies, including Irving. We have Sprague Energy that's up there, PSNH that can get fuel, C3, which is a propane distributor, Shaftmaster, which is the large fishing fleet. So that bridge is very important. And not only that, but in the future, the next generation of Panamax ships, the beam, the width of the ship is going to go from 106 foot wide to 116 feet wide. And the way it is today, if that bridge was not replaced and that pier spacing was not opened up to allow those larger ships to get through, we, New Hampshire, would be the only choke point in the entire Northeast for those large ships. So not only is it's fortuitous that the bridge is red listed and it's at its end of its life, and at the same time these new Panamax ships are coming online, so that from a timing perspective, I would say that aspect of it's very positive. But everything that comes into our state from a shipping perspective comes through Portsmouth. Right. So of course, then you mentioned the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. There's 5,500 employees that work there. That bridge is the only way that the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard can take off spent nuclear fuel off the base. They've been doing it that way since the year 1800. The Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, as you know, it has the whole base has a series of rail networks through it, and they move everything around via rail.
Right, and there was a question there. It was interesting that we talked about that. Someone had mentioned, well, you're right there with the water, so why couldn't they move it via
put it
water?
on a barge or something.
And I guess Pearl Harbor was shut down. This is a submarine
That's
facility.
Right. Whenever you're correct. I mean, the preference for the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy is to move spent nuclear fuel by rail. We've been doing it a very long time. We have that system perfected, and to come out of the base, if you will, having to pick up that container, right, put it on a barge, bring the barge across the river, pick the barge up again on the New Hampshire side, place that rail car on the tracks again and move it. You're just creating an opportunity for something to go wrong.
Right. Well, plus we do also need the better or the wider bridge, and you actually had a photo earlier. Maybe you can dig it out and show people
Yes,
what
yeah.
the bridge would look like when it's done.
Yeah, I brought this along because you'd mentioned that you'd want to see it, but this is
Oh,
this
hold
is
it
a
up for
this
the
is a rendering
people to see.
of what the new Sarah Mildred Long Bridge would look like here. So these are the towers, these high pieces here. This middle section, of course, is where the ships go through, and then this piece would go up and down. What's different from this proposal is that the rail portion would actually come down when a train comes by. This is the other section here. So this middle section would come down when a train has to go over it, and then it goes back up. There's also a 3% incline here, so almost 76% of the recreational marine traffic can go under the new bridge without having to raise it up and down, which will help us from a maintenance cost. And you notice these towers, gentlemen, are concrete.
Yeah.
They're not steel.
Not
So
gonna
from a
rot.
maintenance perspective, that's much, much more favorable.
What's the difference for lifespan on concrete versus steel? Do you happen to know offhand?
Well, if you maintain it, we're looking at getting 100 years out of this bridge. That's our goal, is to get 100 years out of that bridge.
How old is the Sarah Long?
It's 75 years old,
Okay.
and she's very tired, as you could see. I mean, as we were standing by one of the piers, a chunk of concrete had fallen off into the river while we were just sitting there
Yeah,
by
just
chance.
perfect
so,
timing, right?
Right.
Now, I've been asked by somebody who lives in Portsmouth, does this project, I know we're kind of getting away from the road toll, but this is part of it, but this project here would actually increase the port a little bit too, make the length so you can get bigger ships in there?
That's a very good point, and thank you for bringing it up. Yes, so as part of this project with this new bridge, so if the existing bridge is here and upriver is here, this is where all the business that I was talking about, the new bridge is going to be built what we call upstream, so it's going to be built here. In doing that, we have what we call the barge, where the main pier for the port is right here, and then also around the side is what we call the barge wharf, and that's where the Memorial Bridge was built, with the barge wharf. Because this new bridge is going to come in at an angle, we're going to have to remove part of the barge wharf. As part of the mitigation for doing that, because we're not going to have the barge wharf, that means that the main wharf is now going to get about 125 feet longer, which, you're right, will allow us to bring in those larger draft ships, which is another big plus for the state.
Right.
Increases
Great.
business for the state.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's a very important point.
Let's talk about another economic driver, and especially in the southern New Hampshire area, especially in Derry, is the widening of I-93. I know that there's some, it's in the 10-year plan, it's unfunded for the portion that has not been widened yet.
That's right.
Let's talk about that a little bit and how
Okay.
important that really is.
Do you want me to start, Senator, and you can jump in?
Sure, go ahead.
So I-93 is the state's most important transportation project. You're right. It's a project that has $250 million, what we call the capacity improvements, left to finish, and that goes from exit 3 to exit 5, and then 5 up to the split, the I-93 293 split in Manchester. So those sections equal $250 million. We're working on from exit 3 south, and that'll be 3 lanes, and then prepped for the 4th lane. All we have to do is put the pavement down. But that's a project. It's the most important project in the state. It's the major north-south route, if you will. It brings all the traffic up into the North Country, where we can really use the businesses up there for sure. And it's right on the border of Massachusetts.
Okay, and then the million-dollar question is where are we going to get the money to get this?
That is something that I am working on now. I am not prepared to say today what
That's fair
that
enough.
solution is, but I am hoping that before this session is over, we're going to be able to fund continuing northward from 3 to 4. And I think what's important for the citizens to recognize is that when we say $250 million, it's important for everyone to realize that 80% of that is paid for by federal dollars. The reason we have to upfront it is because the federal dollars come in over time. But we as New Hampshire taxpayers aren't fully funding this. We are funding it with our federal gas tax and with some matching. But even the matching now, we use, I don't want to say funny money, but it kind of is, because we're using the turnpike tokens as some of our matches.
Toll credits.
Toll credits, I'm
toll
sorry.
credits,
Toll
yeah.
Oh, I
credits.
still got a bunch of them tokens, you know.
So, and to get back to a number of years ago, myself and other legislators, and I don't believe either one of you were in the legislature at the time, but we put in Garvey bonds, which are federal grant anticipation bonds. The last $195 million that's going to fix I-93 to Exit 3, we bonded at 1.27%.
Wow.
It's just a very, very good environment right now, and that's part of what my solution is going to be, is to add some additional bonding, and I believe that I'll be able to find a mechanism to at least keep this project moving forward.
And that 1.27% was only for 7 years, so we have 6 years left to pay on that bond, which is
Was there
great.
any payments for prepayment at all on those bonds? I know I'm
This
getting
is-
off subject a little bit.
Yeah,
but
the treasurer, the treasurer has done an outstanding job in how they do those bonding, and it's so complicated. But
Yeah.
she has been very good at getting the most advantageous bonding rates and year how they're put out there. So.
Right.
Well,
We're very
we do
fortunate.
these bonds. I know I'm involved in the bonds a bit. I'm a trustee of the trust funds here, so we're worried about bonds. And the town has redone a few of its bonds to get lower rates. Even the county has redone some of its bonds to get lower rates. But as an investor, people like I have friends that invest, and they're saying, well, if you're going to invest in Massachusetts because you get much better rates. So if you're going to put money into bonds to get money out of them, you got to look around and see. So is that well, you're not really a finance. That's a finance question.
But you're looking at it from a whole different end. When we put out the bonds, we actually do it at a premium. For us to get $100 million, we really only spend $80 million because we get premiums to those bonds, and it's a per par value, and it's complicated to explain, but you're looking at it from an investor standpoint. The state of New Hampshire doesn't do that, and nobody can get better rates than right now than the state, and especially New Hampshire, because we have a very good bond rating.
That's right.
So, and ours are tax-free. This is all tax-free. So we get a very good premium when we put our bonds out.
Well, I do have another question on this road toll bill, and I know we talked a little bit about it before the show, and that was about the vehicles that don't use gasoline but still use our roads.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something that is that added in this bill, or is there anything?
It is not in this bill, but Senator Stiles and Senator Waters did have a bill that we heard in Senate Transportation. It was going to increase the registration fee, but there was some, I guess, unfairness to how especially the hybrids were being evaluated. And so what was decided this year was to do a little bit more research on how to deal with these vehicles, but they do use our roads. They should help pay for them, and I believe probably a mechanism of registration. Of course, ultimately, the fairest for anything is miles driven. But before we go too far, I'm wondering if we can allow the commissioner to talk about a road that's really been a problem here in our town of Derry.
Absolutely.
And that's a very dangerous intersection of Kilray and Route 28. So, Commissioner, if we can give us some good news.
Sure. So thank you, Senator. So the senator's right. So this summer, actually, we just advertised on March 4th this project, and the bids are due on the 27th. And the project is the intersection of Kilray Road and Wyndham Depot Road. We're going to add an additional left turn lane, which is 11 feet wide, and then the other lanes will be 11 feet as well. And we'll also have 4-foot shoulders and then traffic signals. That project it's about a half a mile in length, and Senator Rausch is right. It's been a problem road from an accident and safety perspective, and it's slated to be finished early to mid-July this year of 2014.
That's great, because that's well needed. We all know that in Derry in particular, that's probably one of the most dangerous intersections.
We've had a couple of deaths there, and as a person who lives off of Kilray, when you try to cross over, it's very, very difficult. So
Right.
I'm very pleased. It's been a project that I've been following, and again, because of lack of funding, it's been pushed off, but now I'm happy to say that we're going to get that one done.
That's awesome. And did I hear you correct? There'll be lights there at that corner?
That's right. Yeah, there'll be traffic signals as well.
So not just a blinking yellow light?
No, there'll be traffic signals, and any of the guardrail that's substandard to today's standards will be replaced.
Right. How about signage before you approach that? I know as you're coming from Salem into Derry and you're coming down that hill.
Absolutely.
They'll have signage to slow down.
Signage will either be updated or
signage.
replaced, so that whole section will be all modernized and basically new when it's finished.
Right.
And it'll be a little bit safer as well, because just north of that is where the trail crosses, snowmobilers and pedestrians.
Right.
So it's going to be a little bit safer for them to be able to get across the road as well.
Oh.
It's not going to go underground, though. It will be at surface, but
Yeah.
I have a question for the commissioner. How long have you been the commissioner?
I've been the commissioner since September of 2011.
Oh, so you're relatively new, per se.
That's right. I'm on my, this is my third winter. I look at it in winters because of the amount of snow plow we do. So yes, I am relatively new.
Well, the reason why I was going to ask that question, and maybe Senator Rausch would have the answer, is I know there was a lot of, I guess you'd have to call it, development money that was issued by the federal government, the stimulus money, and it was supposed to go to roads and stuff like that. Did New Hampshire get a lot of that money? Did we fix roads?
To that one.
that's a commissioner's answer.
Yeah, you weren't here then, though.
Yeah, I was. I was actually
right.
over at, I was at DOT in '08, and then the Governor Lynch asked me to come run the stimulus program when it came in. And we as a state received $965 million of stimulus funds. DOT received $129.5 million of stimulus funds, and that all went out to road and bridge repair. That year we actually paved 700 miles of roads. And then we also moved the Manchester Airport Access Road, the Ray Wazorek Drive. That project got moved up in the queue by a couple of years. So it all went out to projects.
And that bridge, by the way, is fantastic to get into Merrimack. You don't have to go to either Manchester or Nashua anymore.
Yeah,
so that was great.
The only problem is you don't have to pay a toll, so we're losing money. How many was it? It was like $3 million a year?
1.8 million per year to be exact.
1.8, yeah, because I know people that actually get off and get right back on.
Right.
You
Save
can
the
write
dollar.
a check anytime you want.
Yeah. I think what's also important when it comes to our highway fund is that a lot of times people see an increase in spending and they don't understand that the department has very little control over most of that because it's restricted. All those federal dollars coming in are for projects specifically. There's not latitude about, well, let's take the federal dollar that's supposed to go to 93 and put it over here, or the federal dollar for the bridge. We got Tiger grants that were specific for Memorial Bridge.
Right.
And it's the thing about the road toll is that that's the only money that we have available for some of our maintenance, purchasing salt, equipment. So there's very little unrestricted revenue in that entire budget. Most of it is restricted because of how the money comes in.
Right.
Well, actually, I'm going to just key on, because you mentioned the word salt, and this is one for the commissioner. And we must spend a lot of money on salt, and from what I understand, we're going to, the federal government's pushing away from salt and into some other chemical that's like real expensive.
So we do. We spend between $11 and $14 million per year in salt, and this year will be more on the $14 million mark. The last big year we had with salt was 2007 winter, and we used about 250,000 tons of salt that year. This year will probably be around 210,000 tons, and we budgeted about 150,000 tons.
And the cost of that probably escalated because we saw down south, with the cold snap we had this winter, Atlanta was cold, and some of the southern states were cold. They were grabbing salt as well. So
Yeah, that's another good point. We average between our, right on the seacoast, we average about $58 per ton, and up north it's about $67 per ton. So that's what we pay, and it's really good. Last few weeks ago, when the salt ships were all going down south to Rhode Island and New Jersey, so I heard that some areas were paying $250 per ton.
Wow.
oh wow.
So we've traditionally done very well. We also have ground speed control on our 253 trucks, and we try to meter that. We try to put out 250 pounds of salt per lane mile because you're spreading gold. Salt has gone up 123% since the year 2000. I think Senator Rausch was picking on that earlier, and liquid asphalt cement pavement has gone up 460% since 1991, the last time the road toll was increased. So our equipment, all of our utilities, all that stuff has gone up, but that road toll has stayed the same for the last 23 years, and it's a challenge at best.
Let's
And
talk.
I think it's important to thank our road department, because they've been, we've passed some legislation about salt usage and trying to make sure that a lot of it has to do with the permitting on 93 because of the salt load, but dairy has been very good in working to really mitigate how the salt is used. They've got better equipment, I think, to kind of go with what the commissioner is saying. And also brining technology. Those little white stripes you see before a snowstorm, they lay down brine, and that's to keep the snow from compacting, so you use less salt. So there's a lot of new technology going into trying to minimize the salt. Federal requirements, water quality, so
and it's just good for the environment. And it's just good for the environment.
And ultimately, the salt, the money from the salt comes from the road tax or the gas tax.
That's right.
That's
You're right.
the only way we buy it.
As everything goes up, as it has in years, even a loaf of bread, gallon of milk, everything has gone up, but the gas tax hasn't. So, you know, I could see the reasoning behind the increase and even the need for it, you know, with everything that's going on.
Let's talk about the road maintenance, and the longer that we postpone fixing some of these roads and bridges, you know, does it become more costly?
It does. As a matter of fact, it does. We have 4,600 center lane miles of roads in our state, and about a third of the roads are in poor condition, about 1,567 miles that are in poor condition. And you're right, that's a very good point. So it costs us about $50,000 per mile to keep a good or fair road in good or fair condition. Okay? When it goes to a poor state, so we have 3 levels, good, fair, poor. When the road goes to poor, to bring that back, a total reclamation, it's about $1.1 million per mile. So people say, Chris, why are you paving 101 again? Why are you paving the Spalding Turnpike? It's because we're trying to keep the good roads good, and the poor roads that have already gone to poor are going to have to stay poor until, you know, we get additional funding. And when we do get additional funding, we're trying to spread that out in the most equitable way across the state. Right.
We see it locally. I mean, I don't want to pat. Well, I'll pat Derry's on the back. Derry does a fantastic job on their roads.
Right. Yeah.
The town that I grew up in, and we had spoken about this before the show, but some of these towns haven't done anything in many, many, many years, and you can see the difference in the potholes and the work that's needed for some of these towns.
And I absolutely agree. I mean, when I drive into, I won't use names, but different communities, you really can see that Derry has done a very good job, and hats off to our department. They have been able to manage exactly what the commissioner is saying about not letting our roads get into such poor condition that it's too expensive to repair them. So
it's like the leaky roof scenario. You can have a leaky roof for a little while, but if you let it go too long, you're going to be replacing drywall and rafters and insulation. It's the same thing with our roads and bridges. Bridges are even worse. Right. Sarah Long Bridge that you saw, if you don't do the bare maintenance, the deterioration sets in and it's exponential. And it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, you can't turn that deterioration around.
Right. And I like the fact that we're looking at, when we make these improvements, we're looking at a longer term usage out of these. The Sarah Long Bridge with the cement, you had mentioned that, versus steel.
Right.
We're going to get a lot more life out of it. So that's always a positive.
Well, then the bridges on I-93 now, certainly I know the large ones in Wyndham, those are built to a 100-year standard,
Yeah.
and all the prior ones were 50-year standards. So are all the bridges 100 years, Commissioner?
That's the
or is
goal,
it-
and it depends on how you maintain it, and that's a big point. I mean, we want to get to the point, or I want to get to the point, other than I-93 is probably one of the last few mega projects as we deem as a mega projects. After that, the state's going to be pretty much built out. We just want to get to a point where we can just properly maintain our roads and bridges. And Senator, if we can properly maintain them, wash them every spring, and oil them every spring, we can get 100 years out of them. And that's certainly our goal.
Yeah, I would agree that the maintenance is a key factor. And when you look at the Sarah Long Bridge, it looks like there hasn't been any maintenance on it for a while. Is that true? Has it got to the point where you just don't do the maintenance now?
When that bridge gets to a certain point, like the Sarah Long, you're right, you can only do so much. But we're out there oiling and greasing the critical components like the racks and the bearings, and we do wash the bridges. But like I said earlier, when you get to a certain point, and that's down in a salt-ridden environment,
Yeah.
so you've got
Right on the
really
ocean.
the
Right on the
most
ocean
harsh
beneath there.
elements right down there.
Right.
And it's got the gusset plates, which are the Achilles heel for those truss-type bridges, like the Memorial Bridge had gusset plates, and
Right.
once that moisture gets in there, you can't get it out, and it gets trapped. All that salt gets trapped in there, and you can't get it out, and it starts to deteriorate. So,
Let's talk about some of the state roads way up north, because we had something on transportation. It was a maple sugar business that had a hard time because he was traveling a season weight limit road. And he worked it out, but my understanding is that some of these roads way up north are in pretty rough condition. And I know there's an exemption for oil trucks and milk trucks, but
that's right.
we're seeing more and more businesses up north. And how can we remain business friendly, but yet keep our infrastructure strong?
That's a great question. It's a challenge, and you're right. We were working with that one customer. So let's say this is a frost heave. It's kind of an exaggeration of a frost heave. What happens is when you have a frost heave and you have a very large vehicle, and for us we were trying to keep the weight down below 35,000 pounds or less. If you hit that frost heave when it's starting to warm up, you destroy the pavement. You just cut through it like knife through butter, and it destroys that road. But all at the same time, we're in the maple syrup season, and we absolutely want to be business friendly and help our businesses out. But in this particular case, we just wanted to work with the individual, and maybe if he could have maybe not a heavy load, because his truck is a much larger truck than anyone else uses. I think he retrofitted a former oil truck or something like that. So it carries a lot more product, so his cost per mile is less because he has more product on his truck. Right. Fortunately, it does damage to our road, so what we asked him to do is if he could go early in the morning while the road was still cold or the sun hadn't been coming up yet, or avoid the areas that were already broken, that would work well for us.
Well, I'm going to chime in because it's a conundrum where we know that weight and stress does more damage. Very upset with some of the truckers in that they want to carry the extra weight, but yet they oppose increasing in the road toll. It's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. The frost heave is there because there's water under that. Right. And there's water under it because it's not good drainage. Now, when we redo these roads, these new roads, you don't see the frost heaves like it used to be because they've got a better science on how to make sure that water gets away. Right. But we need money to fix these roads. And if you're contributing to the damage, I think you should be willing to pony up and help maintain and fix them. And so I certainly have had a disagreement with at least a component of the trucking industry. There's another component that they recognize that they need help, but in my opinion, I think you're using the highway. We all have an obligation to make sure it's safe for our citizens and that it's in good enough condition to support our business community.
Right. Now, but how do we prioritize on some of this stuff? If we have limited pools of money, is it typically the bigger communities, the louder communities that it's...
Well, I think New Hampshire's good. I'm going to let the commissioner explain it,
okay, great.
We do it by regions, and maybe if you can explain that.
So we have six patrol districts throughout the state, and we look at all the districts, and we look at every single road in the district from a state road perspective, and we try to, depending on what the budget will be, our goal is to pave 500 miles of roads per year in the state. So every 10 years we have fresh roads.
Yeah.
Well, right now we're on a 19-and-a-half-year cycle. So we're paving about 300 miles of roads. But in each district, for example, we have every year, depending on what the budget will be, we have a list of roads that we're going to pave, right? In each district. We try to keep it equitable. We try to have the same dollar amount in all 6 districts and try to vary between good, fair, and poor. So you have equity and you have par, and that's basically how we do it.
Right, and does that plan change at all? I mean, I was on a planning board for many years in Derry, and we had the 10-year plan and a 30-year capital improvement plan.
Right.
And I know that you can move things around typically, but on the state's 10-year plan, do we stay kind of firm on that, or does that bounce around?
For the most part, we try to keep it whole because there's a lot of public participation in that, and we don't want to upset that after you get going along. But for example, if Senator Rausch's bill passes, when I was approached, they said, okay, Chris, if Senator Rausch's bill passes and there's additional $32 million, and we're going to do, remember I said 13, 12 plus 7?
Right.
What would you do with the additional $13 million for paving, and what would you do with the additional $12 million for paving? And we went out in a very surgical way, looked at every road, state road in the state, and we came up with a spreadsheet and just said, okay, if we have this additional 13 million, additional 12 million, where would it go? So we've got it down, it's draft, but we've got it down to each of the 6 districts, each road, how many miles, it's 1.6 miles on X road for X amount of dollars, and then all the way down, all 6 districts.
Well, I have a question for that. Now, if your bill passes, Senator Rausch, obviously it's not enough to do the Sarah Long Bridge or 93. So something else has to, or either one of them. I mean, it's just not going to be there. The money's not being. And then there's another factor is the reason why the road toll has to be raised is because people aren't driving as much. You might find that people might drive even less with a higher gas price or whatever, and who knows what's going to come around next, a hurricane in the Gulf or whatever. I mean, I think like you said, the speculators are a big part of it, but
well, we're not actually driving less miles. It's just that we have more fuel efficiency, which is what everyone has been hoping for a number of reasons. The real accurate way to get money for your highways is vehicle miles driven, but here certainly in New Hampshire, a lot of people believe that that's too intrusive into your personal space to know how many miles you've driven, and the technology really isn't there yet. I forgot what the rest of your...
Well, I think the technology is there, but it would be intrusive. I mean, we go for our inspection stations, and when they hook up that thing to the car, they can pull every bit of data there is out of your car. So they'd know it, and I believe it goes to some company in Kentucky right now.
It does.
And we pay $5 for each vehicle for that, something like that. So the technology's there, but... would it be intrusive? That's a whole other story. I don't think I don't know if that would pass the House, but it would definitely be something that people would squawk about. And then what happens? Your insurance rate goes up because of that, or this goes up, or that goes up. And now, because somebody works in Massachusetts, they're already paying the Massachusetts income tax. Now they're going to have to pay higher insurance, they have to pay higher this, higher that. So it is very intrusive on the individuals, so I don't think that would go anywhere.
Well, my responsibility is not what happens in Massachusetts, so I'm just trying to make sure that what we have in New Hampshire is to keep our citizens here safe, keep our businesses so that they can move their goods and services, and certainly the infrastructure is critical for us to attract new businesses, and that's why I-93 is so important. I'm happy to be able to work with the commissioner, and I think we're going to be able to solve some of these issues on the funding. Oh, I know what it was. When you were saying $32 million isn't enough to do the Sarah Long and I-93, that's because we're not funding the Sarah Long with a direct outtake from the highway fund. We're going to fund it through Garvey bonds so that when the federal money comes in, we're paying off the principal. Because again, actually the Sarah Long, I believe, is 100% for all practical purposes federal money. So our upfront money is just because we get about $150 million from the federal government per year. We don't want to take all of that and steal from other projects. So we will use the bonds, and then as the federal money comes in, we will pay it back that way. So the 32 million, only a real small component of that to pay for the principal and interest on a over what 15 year or 20 years
15,
is it?
20 years.
15 or 20 years. I don't know what they'll set it up. So that's how that's going to work, and that's why it's going to be affordable to do it. But again, that is going to be federal money. It's just the federal money will come back at a slower rate.
Right.
Now, how much is the current, I know, but I'll ask you, how much is the current road toll tax?
18 cents.
So we're going to go up an additional 4 to 22.
Correct.
Okay, so people will know that you know it may, you know, it'll be twisted that, you know, it's so many % higher and all that.
And do you know off the top of your head what Maine, Vermont, and Mass? I know we are the lowest.
We're the
in
lowest.
The whole region.
Yeah, we're the lowest in New England by a huge margin. I think Maine is, well, Connecticut's 50 cents. Maine is, I don't know them off the top of my head, but we're the lowest by a margin.
I think Maine is 30, and Massachusetts now just went up, and they are pushing 30.
They're 26.5.
But they also charge sales tax, don't they, on the gasoline, and it's included at the pump?
That I don't know.
When I looked that up once, last
I don't
show
know that
we did a show on that.
Yeah.
Even with this increase, we are significantly lower than our surrounding states, and I believe out of the entire country, we are, I think, the fourth or the fifth lowest.
Fourth lowest in the country.
Yeah, we're going to be winding down here shortly, but I had a quick question. Your Senate bill passed either Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. And so how confident are you that it will pass the House?
Well, before I get to the House, Senate Finance has taken it.
Okay. Yeah.
And Senate Finance is looking at it, and I have some anxiety about what might go on in Senate Finance, but I'm confident. I got a pretty good vote out of the Senate. I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to work through whatever we have to get it over to the House. And the fact that the House passed 12 cents last year, I'm certainly hopeful that they'll see 4 cents as a very, very, very moderate attempt to help solve our funding issue.
So the hurdle is the Senate Finance.
Yes.
I believe that, I think you're absolutely right as far as the House goes, because I think last year they tried to go too much, right? And it was too much for people to take on a whole 12 cents when it went over to the Senate. And you know, people are already struggling to add that to their overall costs, and fuel, as we all know, between, you know, heating fuel this past winter and everything else is going up. And I understand, you still have to pay for all your vehicles, and you have to pay for everything to maintain the roads. So
I use this comment that if you try to swallow the whole apple, you're probably going to choke to death. But if you take it a bite at a time, you'll have a pleasurable experience. So I'm trying to take a bite at a time.
yeah, and without the gambling, we're in trouble. You know, without we need a source of income.
I wish we had it.
Okay, so
Okay.
We got to wind it, but if you gentlemen want to have a last say to the viewing public, feel free.
I think I've spoken enough.
Like 2-3 minutes.
I'm going to let the commissioner wrap it up.
Okay.
Well, thanks. I think, again, I think any additional revenue that comes in if Senator Rausch's bill passes, it's all going to go out to road and bridge repair, which is very much needed. We still have to think and be creative in how we can find the remaining $250 million to finish I-93. Again, it's a very important project. I think if we can find a funding source to just move forward and finish that project, it'll be better for the state in so many ways. All the engineering for that project is being done now, but don't forget, that project's supposed to be finished by 2020. Our environmental permits lapse in 2020. And even if we were to start advertising projects a year from now, we would just barely finish the end of 2019. So it's very important that we find our funding source.
Right.
And for me, I'm happy to represent you guys and Derry, Wyndham, and Hampstead as a state senator, and I'm hopeful that this is just one more of many issues that we'll be able to find a solution, because I really truly believe that we're sent up there to solve problems, and difficult issue or not, I think we have an obligation to do that.
Absolutely.
All right, well, this has been the Legislators Lounge. Today, this is our second show of 2014, and we want to thank our guests for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank
For
you.
coming, and I will catch you next time.